to start with a quick question, and that's this. Do you like getting gifts? Of course, who doesn't like getting gifts? As you get older, your gifts get crappier, right? You start getting socks and underwear, and useful, it's not fun. But when you're little, I don't know about you, but I used to do this. I'd go grab a gift, and I would tear just a sliver, right, of like the underside to see what the gift was, but not enough to give the gift away, right? Just enough to see that it was a Nerf gun, but not enough to know, like, did it have a laser scope? Or like, how many darts did it come with, right? That's what I think today is a little bit like. For the past 5 months, I've been working on this research study, and today is just kind of, we're peeling back just that first layer to see what we're learning and what we're uncovering. We literally finalized the data last week. Also, I was finalizing an adoption. So last week, thank you. So last week, no data, no baby. This week, data and baby. So if I'm like quasi-coherent and I don't fall asleep, that's gonna be a win for me. So expectations, just knock them down a little bit. All right, so the study is called the Canadian Online Fundraising Scorecard. And what we did is we donated, signed up for emails, tracked all communication of 152 Canadian organizations. We looked at 921 different web pages. We looked at over 1,200 emails. We looked at 3 key areas of online fundraising. So all this research and experimentation is solely focused on fundraising, so not advocacy and things like that. It's fundraising to produce this one main study. So we borrowed from some methodology that we used a few years ago in 2014 in the US called the Fundraising Scorecard. And so we borrowed from that. And what we're going to do as we release the full study, we'll do a little compare and contrast, see how things have changed, kind of compare Canada to the US as much as we can. So before we dive into kind of those 3 key areas and some of what we found, I want to just kind of set the stage a bit of who we are and what we do, but more so like our approach and lens, because it'll help make the research study make some more sense. So we are a research lab, fundraising research lab and consultancy. So we'll use fundraising research studies like this. We'll look at huge swaths of data, and we'll try to analyze why donors do or don't do the things that they do. We're trying to decode that. We think if we can better understand donors through experimentation and research, we can do better fundraising. It's not just about sending more emails, it's about understanding donors. So we apply this research in an experiment mentality, so we'll actually run a lot of A/B tests and experiments with our research partners. They're generally larger organizations with more data. And then we publish all of those research and finding. We've got 1,100 experiments in our library. You can go search them today if you want. They're all tagged by different variables. And then we turn that. We've got a director of research who kind of looks through all of our experimentation and tries to find the patterns. And we turn those into things like ebooks and webinars. We've got 3 free courses you can take online, and we're working towards digital certification. Because I think when digital first happened, we kind of didn't really know what we were doing. Everyone's just kind of carving out in the wilderness, and people like Jason are kind of leading the charge. And now I think we found a lot of what we know maybe isn't actually that good. Often what we're doing is maybe the complete opposite. That's at least what our research is telling us. So that's kind of what we're trying to do, is decode giving and kind of make sense for nonprofits. All right, so who is in this study? Like I said, there's 152 different organizations. Our designations, our legal designations in Canada aren't the most useful here. So welfare actually includes a lot of international organizations as well as local organizations. And another key point here, benefits to community encompasses a lot of environmental organizations, which is a focus of ours. And then education, those are mainly public policy institutions. We didn't look a lot at higher ed. That's not who we generally work with. Doesn't normally fit our model. So when you see education, that's normally policy institutes and things like that. So organization by size, we skew a little bit larger. Most of our clients and people we work with have revenues of $5 million and above. So there's a couple megas in here, 50 million plus. There's a bunch in that 10 to 50, some in the 5, and then only a couple that are less than $5 million and under. And geographically, most are in Ontario and then BC, with some in Alberta, and then just a couple in like Manitoba, Nova Scotia, and Quebec. And so we're trying to choose organizations that are more in the areas that we work, and that I can meet with, and we can discuss our research partnership potential with them. So that's kind of who the organizations were. And then how we went about scoring it, we looked at these 3 key areas of online fundraising. The first one is email acquisition or email signups. How do you get people to give you their information so that you can start communicating them, building a relationship? Once you have their email, what type of communication do you send? Specifically, we were looking at appeals. So we've got thousands of emails, but we were combing through to only find appeals specifically asking for money. And then we looked at the donation page or the landing page that they pointed us to from those emails. Or if they didn't send us an appeal, we would just go to their website, find the donation page. So we focus a lot on email. I went really quick there. We focus a lot on email, and here's why. When we do data analysis of client after client after client after client, we find charts like this, where email is high traffic and high revenue, right? High traffic, high revenue. High traffic, high revenue. Some are a little bit lower traffic, but the revenue is super high. When it comes to online fundraising, the size and quality of your email list is the best indicator of how much money you can raise online. So yes, social's cool. Yes, there's some neat stuff going on. Until we see data that shows us something else, email is the #1 source and thing you should be focusing on in online fundraising. And it's not just about money online. When we started looking at how donors work offline and online, this is what we found. Just by adding email communication, offline donors gave 90% more. So those are people that never make an online donation. They still write their checks, they still go to events, whatever it might be. Just by getting emails, they give 90% more. So even if your online revenue numbers aren't going up, there's still huge and immense value in capturing and sending emails. All right, so we looked at these 3 main areas. We don't think of a donor funnel, we think of a donor mountain, right? No one wakes up in the morning and says, I'd just like to give my money away today. We have to work very hard to kind of communicate value, reduce friction, and move people up this donor journey. So as people are going through this, at each stage, they're making this decision. Is there more value in this act, or is there more cost in this act? And the tough thing with this is it's operating at a subconscious level. You can talk to a donor and say, why did you give today? And they will lie to your face. Not intentionally, but they'll lie. They don't know why they do the things they do. That's why experimentation and testing is so important. So at each of these stages, we're trying to figure out, they're making little micro decisions. Do I open this email? Do I read this email? Do I click this button? Do I click this? How much do I give? How much information should I give? They're making all these decisions. And so when we work with clients and we work in research, we're trying to optimize each one of these little micro steps along the journey. And if we go yes, 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 it leads to a donation. Right? This is a super nerdy way to think about, but the basic is high value, low cost. That's what we're trying to do. 2 things that I'm going to focus on a lot is value proposition. Do they understand your value proposition? And then friction. Are you kind of getting out of their way once they want to take an action? So this is the last kind of context setting thing, and we'll get into the study. This is the value proposition question that all organizations need to answer. If I'm your ideal supporter, why should I give to you rather than some organization or not at all? Every time you sit down and run a fundraising letter, email, landing page, whatever it might be, you should be trying to answer this question. Because you exist is not an answer. Because you do good work is not an answer, right? You have to answer this question. A few ways that you can do it. 1, appeal. Do they want to support you? And exclusivity. Can they get it anywhere else? 2 ways to answer that question. Another one, clarity. Do they understand who you are and what you do? This is by far the biggest miss of nonprofits that we see. It's just not clear. It's clear to you. It's not clear to your donors. They just don't understand. And then the last one is, do they believe you? You can say that you're the best, but why should they believe you? Why are you trustworthy? This is credibility. Those are some ways that you can answer the value proposition. Okay, so that's a bit of our methodology, but that's what's behind the scoring. We looked at our research library and all of our work and said, here's what we think makes organizations do great online fundraising. We tried to assign some point values so we could be somewhat objective to it in these key areas, and then we gave grades and scores. So then take all these lessons and just copy them, right? This is new best practice. Wrong. This is just data and insights. You still have to test this stuff yourself. Just because it worked for this organization doesn't mean it's going to work for yours. We're not just trying to replace some best practice with what we found as best practice. We're trying to say, here's maybe something that you haven't thought about that you should test. But testing is still the key. Okay, that's context stuff over. Jump into the study here. So the overall results, here's the overall grade distribution. Not great. You can see that negative line. I actually had to Google how to type out and that's how you do it. So we said that's very disappointing. So let's grade on a curve. Oh, actually, just 1 second on the I and we have tons and tons and tons of empathy for organizations. I've worked my whole career in nonprofits. I worked at a startup nonprofit. I was the only one. I was director of development. I was marketing director, and I sucked at fundraising in a lot of these areas. I have clients in here who got bad scores. I've got friends that I know and work with who got bad scores. This isn't necessarily about being bad. This is about seeing opportunity, about being good, okay? All right, so we decided let's make sure that we kind of curve this thing. So it's not a perfect bell curve, but most of these results skewed so heavily to the negative side or the Fs that we tried to curve most things. So this is how things kind of turned out. There's still very few As, some more Bs, but most people fit into that D category. Across charity type is fairly flat. You can see that other, there's really only one other or maybe two others, and one was international and one was education. It's relatively flat for the most part. Education's down a little bit and religion's up a little bit, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then overall grades by area, we were pretty much bad across the board. Whether it's email sign up, fundraising emails, or online giving experience, there was a bunch of Fs being handed out. So it's not like we were great in one area and not great in others. We were kind of bad across the board. So I guess that's just more negative news. Okay, so email sign up. It's the first key area that we're going to talk about. Here were the curved grades for email sign up. So like we said, this is the bell curve. Across the different verticals, again, it's relatively flat. Others down a little bit, and religion's up tiny bit. But for the most part, there's not some huge variance between sectors or industries. So now here are some of the results. So when we found signing up for emails were the offers or the value proposition to sign up for email. Very appealing, somewhat appealing, or not appealing. We found that only 6% of offers why you should sign up for an email was very appealing. 59% were not appealing at all. And then when we looked at exclusivity, can you get this anywhere else? Only 8% were kind of exclusive to that organization. 30% were somewhat exclusive, and most you can just get anywhere. And then we looked at, well, how are people communicating the value proposition? Were they using more than one sentence to communicate value at all? And the answer is, for the most part, no. 2/3 of organizations said nothing, no copy, about why you should sign up for an email, right? So the summary of this is, an email newsletter? Where do I sign up? Why would someone sign up for a crappy newsletter? Especially if we're not communicating what the newsletter is about. This is by far, well, maybe not by far, this is one of the two biggest failures of not just ours in Canada, but I think nonprofits overall. We have newsletter forms that are buried in our footers, and we expect donors to just randomly find them and say, oh, I'd love to get more emails in my inbox, please. No, why? Why would they do that? So here's some examples of some good and some bad. So the good ones, I haven't scrubbed out their names. For the bad ones, I have, just in case they're in the room. All right, so the first good one, here's the Hockey Hall of Fame. I'll zoom in here so you can see a little bit more about this specific offer, and then highlight a few things. Some of these keywords here, behind the scenes, special and exclusive. You'll also receive special and other surprises, right? Those are kind of exclusive and special. Now you're not the Hockey Hall of Fame. They probably have a lot of interesting things that they can do. So here's a more normal organization. This is Ratanac. It's an international organization. And here's what their value proposition looked a little bit more like. So you can get stories from Cambodia to your inbox, learn how you can get involved in the fight against exploitation, human trafficking. We'll also send you 3 desktop wallpapers as a welcome. I don't know if anyone's ever going to use those wallpapers, but the fact that they're like trying to do something to give you, something in exchange, at least communicates a sense of value or value exchange, which is kind of nice. And another good example, this is the Canadian Institute of the Blind, I believe, and they go by CNIB. I don't know why we do so many acronyms. You have no idea what this organization is about, and CNIB means nothing. We love acronyms, and they're absolute garbage. All right, here's their value proposition. Be the first to hear success stories, find out about events going on in your community, follow along as your support changes their lives. Now, these aren't like life-changing value propositions, right? This isn't like the most amazing thing in the world. But it's something that communicates why someone should sign up and what they'll get. And some offer is better than no offer every single time. All right, so a couple not so good examples. So here's a pretty classic thing that we saw in the study, kind of big homepage, and then at the bottom here, you'll see the kind of where to sign up for the newsletter. So if we kind of zoom on in here, you'll just see this, sign up for a newsletter, and then in this kind of value copy, I guess you could call it, they're saying check out past articles, and they link to other PDFs. So if you wanted to learn more, you go into a PDF in a new tab with no ability to come back and then sign up. So even just the user experience there is a little wonky. But sign up for our newsletter. That's it. And maybe you can see some past examples. Here's another one. This is a nice looking website. Right at the top, they have receive our email updates. Receive is a better word to use than sign up. Sign up communicates I have to do something. Receive communicates I get something. So receive is better here. But other than that, that's it. How often am I going to get it? What kind of things should I expect? Is this unique at all? Some people maybe know this organization. And some organizations we saw in the study would use a 2-step approach. So for simplicity, they'd have a form like this. People would put in their email, click submit. Then they would take you to a second page with your email kind of already input it, and then you can put in first name, last name, and other information. It's not a terrible hack to kind of get more information. The downside is you're still not communicating value before someone chooses to give you their information. So that's fine, you've got a value proposition, but no one's going to see it before they start the process. So it might be counterintuitive to have more copy on a home page or have more explanation on why someone should get your newsletter. But if they just see this, unless they say, I for sure want to get email updates from this organization, nobody is signing up for this email. And so then here's another example of kind of a page that you would get to once you say you want to sign up for a newsletter. So we have newsletter sign up, and then check out this inspiring copy. Please fill out the form below and agree to privacy policy in order to subscribe to our newsletter. Sign me up, right? It's pretty bad. Again, even if you wanted to sign up for a newsletter, you might read that and go like, not now, right? We're not communicating value, and it's not just communicating value once, it's a donor mountain. At each stage, we have to communicate value. Even if they said yes at the first stage, we still need to reiterate that. We'll talk more about that on the donation page side. And sign up for our newsletter is like one of the worst calls to action. Our is possessive, newsletter is bland and generic. So even just changing that up can help a little bit. And again, some offer is better than no offer. So some of the rationale, holy smokes, I'm not going fast enough. Okay, here's just one test. So newsletter on the left, stay informed on the right with some copy, increases conversion rate almost 28%. Here's another one. Instead of just an email subscribe on the top, we have take a free online course. It was like a three-part little video course, helped increase conversion rate 47%. This one, newsletter's buried in the bottom. So we said, what if we just put it kind of in line in this example, and then on this one, what if we had it slide out, kind of like a pop-out? And in this case, just by having it in line, 350% increase. Just by having a pop-up, 470% increase. A lot of times, people don't even know where to sign up for emails. So having things in line and having pop-ups, you may hate them, but at least people can interact with and make a decision. Do I want to receive this or not? Help solve some of the navigation problem. Is it all about value proposition? No, that's just part of it. So here's a terrible value proposition. Sign up, no copy, be informed. If you do click yes, you come to this page. So first, tons of distraction, tons of other things that you can do. I'm just trying to sign up for an email. Sign up for e-news. I'm on your e-newsletter page. Subscribe to newsletter, not the greatest text. Then they make you actually create and register for an account just to get their newsletters. So talk about friction. I have to go through some not so great steps. I need to create an account. No one wants another account just to get your newsletters. It's not a great flow. And then this is a common theme as well. Friction is a choice. I do have empathy for budgets. I have empathy for tools that someone else bought before you were there, and I have empathy for the lack of good tools in our sector. I really, really, really do. But it's still a choice to use them. It's still a choice to not customize them. It's still a choice to not work around them. They may be the only choice that you have, and that's fine. I understand there's other priorities. But a crappy tool is a choice. So if you say, oh, it's our template, you're choosing to use that template. So just want to plant that seed, especially as more and more people give, and we're worried about user experience and crappy tools. It is a choice to use a crappy tool. A couple free resources. We've got a class, a 13-part class on how to use Facebook ads to kind of acquire emails, donation page templates, and a guide. All right, so some fundraising emails. We looked at how many organizations sent an appeal at all in the first 90 days. That's all that we did. We just closed the study at 90 days. So 42% sent an appeal. The others did not. Looking across sectors here, it looks like the most kind of passive sectors were health. Often they're kind of big and they're not very focused on kind of the average common folk donor. And the more aggressive ones are benefits to community or more environmental organizations. They were a lot more aggressive, not a bad thing, not a good thing, but they were generally more aggressive in terms of communicating or asking for money within the first 90 days. Yeah, a lot of F's again. Here's the overall score. One thing I want to highlight is the difference between religion and kind of education. So religion is normally very emotional, very values-driven, not always so logical. And then public policy is basically the total opposite. It's information, it's stats, it's facts. And when it comes to fundraising, emotion always trumps logic, every single time. People make decisions to give with emotion, they back it up with logic. If you lead with logic, you're done. So at least that's what our research is telling us, which is why public policy and education had a lower grade. So time until solicitation, there's no common pattern really, but the most people waited until about one or 2 months to make an appeal, and some waited 3 months. Most people didn't have like an automation campaign. This was normally we just happened to be in the middle of a Women's Day campaign or a spring campaign, or we just kind of got caught in their other communications. It wasn't like an intentional welcome series. I think we are going to go back and look at the first 30 days specifically and see what type of communication and how people are getting welcomed, but we don't have that yet. But one thing you'll notice is that the people that asked immediately, it was one of the lowest value appeals. It scored the lowest. So I don't know if there's a cause or correlation of just kind of they just gave and so now you're going boom, please give, or if it was just you didn't take the amount of time to actually communicate what the donation should be about. So some of the results here with email, is it from an individual or an organization? Here's a test where on the left it's an organization, on the right it's a person. Just coming from a person, increased opens 28%. I'll circle back to some of this. If an ask is made, is it clear what your donation will be used for? 61% was yes, which is good, but there's still about 40% of people where it's not clear what my donation will be used for. One quick example here is this call to action section. On the left here, we have find out how you can advance responsible spending. On the other side, your generous donation will help us get the gift in plain sight. Or not in plain sight. Get this, I can't read that far. Your generous donation will help. Here's what we found. The one on the right, pretty big drop in click rate, right? We're talking about your donation. But here's the thing, huge increase in conversion rate, which leads to a huge increase in revenue. Your goal is not clicks with a fundraising email. It's donations. Videos are great for clicks, generally bad for donations. Learn more, good for clicks, generally bad for donations. If you are asking for money, be specific, be clear, be direct, make your case, and don't try to bait and switch and confuse the donor, because they'll click it and be like, whoa, I was just trying to learn more, now you're asking me for money. We see it all the time. Another common thing here is, does it look like a personal solicitation? Only 3% of organizations sent an email that looked like it came from a person. And here's why that's so important. Here's a test that we ran with email design on the right there. Yeah, on the right. It's a kind of classic email template, right? Banner and copy button. And on the left, we kind of stripped some of that down, increased clicks and increased donations pretty significantly. Somebody said, well, could we take this even further? And we ran a follow-up study. And we took that email and we stripped it down even further on the right and got an even greater lift in donations. I won't walk all the way through kind of everything that we did here. Here's the main point, and this came out of our research of over 500 different emails. People give to people, not email marketing machines. The more that your fundraising appeal sounds like a person, comes from a person, feels like a person, people are more likely to give. We know this to be true in the offline world. We know this about fundraising is about relationships, but for whatever reason, when it came to online fundraising, we just kind of threw that aside and like, give us the brand and give us the marketing. And I don't know why we did that. And what we're seeing in our research is people don't want to be marketed to, they want to be communicated with. All right, so here's a couple examples. This is a good example. So this is Kuso International. So subject line, it's personalized to the person and Tanzania. So there's a couple key things that stand out. It's from a person and then hyphen organization, so that's better than coming from just Kuso. It might be even better if it was from the person. It's something worth testing. Then we get into the email. This preview text isn't great. This just screams email marketing, right? No one sends a personal email that says, can't see this email in your browser. No one does that. If you have to use an image, this isn't bad. It kind of reconfirms the value proposition, how $1 equals 10. They do have a good headline. And then once you get into the story here, it's personalized. The images are great. This is Dr. D'Souza. He's a volunteer, so they're pictures of him on his trip. So again, it's kind of personalized. And they have a decent value proposition or an offer here, how this hospital needs more medical supplies. Donate now is a pretty recognizable call to action. They reconfirm the kind of value prop of what your gift will do today, later on, which is good. It gets personal again at the end about my trip or I language from Dr. D'Souza. The PS reconfirms it again. You don't need, in my opinion, a lot of this kind of, not garbage, but this other stuff at the end to kind of design it, and then you maybe have conflicting calls to action. Another good example, this was Amnesty International. I'm going to focus in on this kind of value proposition or offer or ask, how it's quite strong and it's quite direct, but it's donor knows what their donation will be doing and how it can be beneficial. And then here's another example of an email that feels quite personal, right? If you take out this kind of top image and this bottom image stuff, it looks like quite a personal email, which is good. I don't know why we put electronic signatures on everything. No one sends emails with those. I don't get many emails that have electronic signatures, so I'm not exactly sure why we do it. And a couple not so good examples here. I know I'm running out of time. So Giving Hope for Mental Health, kind of generic. I blacked out the organization's name and logo, so you can see it comes from an organization. Boom, big old logo. Who doesn't love a logo? Then we have this image. I think it's an organization person who's kind of in the position of the hero in this photo. Look at all that real estate taken up by the logo and an image of themselves. Often not great. They personalize it, but then they start getting into, look at all that black. Organization, 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 organization. And then their call to action at the end is click here to make a contribution. Not a strong call to action. Just in case here you saw, oh, we've got a not so great logo. Or in case you missed our logo, we've got it again. I'm going to skip through a couple of these examples so I can get to a little bit of the donation page. Jason stole a little bit of my time, so I said I'd throw him under the bus by taking a little of your break. Okay, so I do have a free email fundraising course as well, and a couple ebooks and guides. It's all on our website. You can find it. So online giving experience grades. Again, we didn't find too much. Education's down a little bit in the experience. But what we found is that there wasn't a super strong value proposition across the board with donation pages. A lot of organizations didn't use any copy again on the donation page. So again, unless you've committed to making a donation, there's nothing that reiterates or confirms your value. There's often not a sense of urgency, which can be really tough. And very few organizations use incentives like matching gifts or something physical and a premium, which we can debate the value or merits. But only about a quarter use some kind of incentive or not. And here's just one example about how important copy is. On the left, it's kind of a normal donation page, and on the right, all we did was add about 3 or 4 paragraphs of pretty simple copy, and it led to a 150% increase in donations. So hopefully that's one of the things you're taking away from this is copy is underused. Buttons, if you're going to use buttons here, please don't make them radio buttons, those little ones that are really hard to see and click. We do have an experiment in here, right here, that shows, in this case in particular, a 63% increase just by using bigger buttons. And then I want to back up to this. One of the biggest things that we've seen on donation pages is just navigation issues. So I'm jumping all over the place. I realize that. Here we go. Are there buttons and other navigation? Only a quarter of organizations took out the navigation items on their website when someone went to a donation page. So that means like your home and about us and all that kind of stuff, and then your footer, those all remain on a donation page. Those are all links and distractions for people to use. We found here just by removing it, increases 20% or decrease in 20% with navigation. Here just by removing that top level navigation, increase of almost 200% in donations. These are our donation pages and flows are filled with distraction and friction. Here's another one that we saw. A lot of tools make you confirm your donation before you complete it. Just by removing that one extra step, for this example, increased donations almost 180%. If someone said they want to donate, they've put in all their information, they said I want to give, now you have one more step to just say, are you sure? A bunch of people go, maybe not. So unless you have a real good reason to confirm the donation, just kind of get rid of it. We don't use a lot of third-party credibility, things like Imagine Canada or associations, almost no testimonials, and very few organizations even use their registered charity code on the donation page. It's not a huge deal, but it is one of the things that some more sophisticated donors will look for. I'm going to send out these slides afterwards. It'll have a lot of the good and the bad, and you can go through them. Sorry that I wasn't going so fast. I was nervous this morning that I was going to be over time, and I am. So we'll have to get you this. I'm going to wrap up here with a couple key points. Monthly donation pop-up was something that I had never seen before until this study. We actually ran an experiment and used a monthly donation pop-up at the point of conversion, helped increase donations almost 70% in our example. It's one tool that's built in. It's something to maybe try. A lot of people have, you can give monthly, but no value proposition. So do you want to give monthly? Maybe, maybe not, but we're not communicating why someone should choose to give monthly. We've got a study coming out next month on recurring giving in the States that we did with Salesforce, so there'll be a lot more on recurring giving there. A shout out to Canada Helps. They have a really good form, so if you can't afford big expensive things or your customized things and you're just kind of bare bonesing it, they have a really good form. It scored really high. It performs well. It lets you know when people are making mistakes. It's easy to customize. So that was a shout out as well to Abbotsford Community Services. And then I'm going to skip through the bad. Here's a beautiful website. Gets to the point of donation. Flips you to this thing. And then you go through 7 more steps of that. So why we would spend so much time and energy on this beautiful site and care so little about the donation experience blows my mind. So if you hire an agency to help you, ask them what they know about fundraising. Ask them what they know about design or donations. because it's often leading you astray. Here's some donation friction. Page 1 is after you click donate. Page 2 is actually after you click personal giving. Look at all the decisions a donor needs to make here just to make a one-time gift, right? We call this decision friction. How do you wade through this labyrinth to make a donation? And then this one, just no value proposition, very little of what they can do. All right, we have a new course coming out on donation and landing pages as well. So if you want to go deeper, I know that was super, super quick. I'm sorry about that. Blame my baby. You can email me anytime at brady@nextafter.com. I'm at Brady Josephson. And all of these free resources are at nextafter.com. You can find our courses, you can find our webinars, you can find our ebooks, all that kind of stuff. That is it.